everybody. Intimate group here. Thanks for joining us. What game show is most enjoyed by CCLers? Any thoughts? I'm just going to say it's Jeopardy, because every answer is in the form of a question. Yeah, so Scott gave us a little introduction. I'm Andy, that's Scott. I'm going to just go through a few slides that are based on a talk that John Sabin did at the June conference. He's much better than me, so this is the quick and dirty version. If you want the full treatment, go find John's talk on YouTube. There's a Citizens Climate Lobby channel, and then it's under 2023 June conference. And after this quick talk, we'll do a little practice session, and then we'll talk about how the practice session went. So motivational interviewing was developed in the 90s. It's a counseling tool that was used in the treatment of addiction, still is. And in MI, the counselor looks to a client's own motivations for becoming clean and sober, and just facilitates their own pathway there. The counselor is a respectful guide, supporting their client and where the client wants to go. And CCL is pioneering efforts to use MI techniques in politics, specifically climate activism. And our task is to uncover other people's own motivation for creating a livable world and guiding them to find their own path towards climate action. So one of the problems MI can help us with is avoiding reactance. Reactance is a psychological defense mechanism. It's when we feel like somebody's asking us to do something or tell us something, our instinct is to push back. No, I want my own sense of autonomy and independence. So whatever idea you come up with, I'm going to discount. And this creates a boomerang effect where, you try and say, the sky's falling, and people immediately might feel more negative about, climate action than they did when they started, because we didn't approach them in, a respectful and non-judgmental way. We don't want that boomerang to happen, so MI can help us avoid it. One way to avoid reactance is by inhibiting the writing reflex. So if you look at this slide, you're probably really bugged by it. You might not be able to hear what I'm saying because you're so bugged by it. You're experiencing the writing reflex because you want to fix the slide. And MI, what that means is that if we hear somebody say something that is obviously incorrect to us, our instinct is to correct it. But in order to practice MI, we have to hold back. We have to inhibit that instinct to correct. Imagine someone coming into your house and they see a crooked picture and they start fixing it. That'd be pretty rude. Now imagine somebody coming into your head and trying to fix your crooked ideas. It would just be so much more worse. So in order to establish a respectful, trusting relationship that has a good chance to influence people, we have to refrain from correcting what we perceive as the other person's errors. It doesn't mean we can never offer correcting information, but we have to do it in a particular way and watch that knee-jerk reaction. So what should we be doing? The central technique of motivational interviewing is called reflective listening. And these are kind of the 4 steps to reflective listening: asking open-ended questions, offering affirmations about the other person's values and strengths and points of common ground. When we do appreciations, we're offering an affirmation, and then reflections. Reflections are the heart of reflective listening, funnily enough. And you can't call it MI if you're not doing reflective listening. So we encourage people to offer 2 reflections for every question you ask, so that you're basically repeating back what you think you heard the other people say, and to make sure you're on the same page. and that builds trust. And then a summary is just a good way in any conversation to make sure that you're on the same page with the person you're talking to. And it also helps if you can remember that summary. If you're like in a series of lobby meetings, starting the next meeting with your summary from the last meeting, it kind of builds continuity and reminds the person of that trust that you've already built up with them. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Yeah, thanks. So the reason that I was interested in getting involved with this particular group, this particular event, was I spent a significant amount of time doing a lot of canvassing for a political candidate. And as a kind of tetchy mathematician who's constantly trying to correct other people and tell them, no, the math goes this way, and I figured I would probably not be a very good canvasser. I would probably end up getting in fights and just hate it. And I was surprised to find that I could suppress my instincts, and that I found it really kind of putting on that other canvassing personality, which is different from my usual one, was actually for me a big relief. And when I was listening to John Sabin talk about motivational interviewing, one of the things that kept happening was I kept saying, yes, this is exactly the kinds of things that I found going door to door, talking about politics is effective. It is not effective to try and correct other people's misimpressions about how their world is structured. It is much better to really spend your time listening, trying to understand them. And I really want to stress this reflection. I would have never put it that way, but it's a great way to put it. If you can summarize what the other person said in a completely respectful manner, not in the form of, oh, so you probably believe, but more along the lines of, yes, I'm showing you that I understand your perspective without ever saying you necessarily agree with it, because you might not. But to just give an honest reflection of what they said to you. That to me is very powerful in two ways. One, you do make sure that you understand what they said, because you can't do this without listening closely and giving them a chance to finish. And then the second thing that often happens is there's a crowd of people who really love to tell you, no, it's not quite like that. You didn't understand. Here's the way I really meant it. They, first of all, appreciate the fact that you're making the effort, and they love to correct you in your misunderstanding of what they're saying, but it generates an enormous amount of conversation. And that really is what you want when you're going door to door. I don't take the attitude that your goal is to just rapidly get to the next door. Your goal is to make the person that you're talking to, I try to get the person that you're talking to have a good experience, to think, this person is connected to a politician that I could conceivably support. And so, this idea of trying to, I understand you, let's move on. I would say that this is a very important aspect of what we're talking about. And Bruce, by the way, because he's part of Better Angels, he has thought a lot about these things. So he has a comment to make, I guess. Yes? Yeah, good.
One of the other big advantages of the reflective listening approach is it forces you to shut off your corrective, because you're trying to make sure you've heard what the other person is saying. And Braver Angels, when we practice this, we actually have a similar to the orders we have, but we have a procedure which matches so nicely with Citizens Climate Lobby. That was why I formed the Braver Angels action team within Citizens Climate Lobby, to bring some of their sensibility to us, but to give them some of our experience as well. And that reflective listening is so important.
So I want to give a chance for any questions about it. We would like to have an active learning exercise in a moment, but if you have we're not experts, and Bruce is probably, our expert here. So we have enough expertise to answer questions, but if you have any thoughts or anything you want to share about it before we begin practicing it, I'm very happy to hear. Yes, okay, hang on.
Hi, as an immigrant, I would like to know, isn't that taught in high school? I mean, really?
It's been a long time since I've been in high school.
No.
Yeah,
The answer is no.
the answer is no. Oh, my God.
So the question was, is this taught in high school? And, well, probably not. Yeah, hang on. Okay, so now, yes, I want to hear this. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I did not learn like exactly this. I go to a Christian classical school, and in one of our classes, Understanding the Times, the first book that we read was about having meaningful conversations with people, and a big part of that was listening to people and going into a conversation not for yourself but for the other person, and that looks like being receptive and talking about what the other person likes to talk about and listening to their views and all that stuff. I don't know if it's would be a normal thing for somebody in high school to learn, because I don't really go to a normal high school, but I did learn something like this.
Cool. Very glad to hear that. And I think that high schools are much better at this business of trying to make people good citizens than maybe when I was a kid.
I'm wondering how you can stay engaged with an individual who has their monologue, and the monologue is just doesn't quit and doesn't allow for even to get any feedback at all.
Yes. And I mean, we are all a little guilty of this too, right? We know we can identify with people. When you get somebody asking you something you're interested in, it's hard to stop sometimes. So I would say that having some empathy is where it begins. But also, I mean, it turns out that really good conversations they're not all non-interruptive. I mean, I think that's one of the things that people tell you. You never interrupt. If the person talks for 25 minutes, you never jump in. But you can jump in you can particularly jump in to say something positive. People react well to that. And that was something that I would try to do. Now, I gotta say, there are people that I have trouble finding agreement with. And so that can be a trick. But to me, that is the primary, just if you're talking about a tool to stop the monologue, if you can say, oh, I get that. I've had this experience, and hopefully, yeah. So does it negate the validity of their experience to say you've had a similar experience? And you're taking the floor.
What I say is maybe instead of relating your own experience, you can kind of interrupt people to say, I want to make sure I understood what you said, and then use that as an opportunity to reflect to them. Don't talk about yourself, but reflect what you heard them say. And then, if there's, I got that right. And then you can ask a follow-up question. What do you think about X, to kind of move things forward and get off the monologue and try and make it more back and forth.
Favorite Angels, what we taught or have learned is a thing we call LAP, which basically incorporates the same ideas, but you listen, then you appreciate, and then you pivot, which means you don't just jump into your counterpoint, much as I would like to. Being a mathematician, I like to talk with the whiteboard. But instead you say, would it be all right if I shared my perspective on that, or why I think the way I do about it? Well, you just explained to them in a way that makes them feel good by appreciating what they've said. And then I think as long as you don't go with, anthropal direction and crush them, or try to, as long as you're willing to share your experience or your information the way they've just shared theirs. It's a very, we always say we're not here to change minds, but we are here to change hearts. That's, you'll hear all this tomorrow if you come and talk on communicating with conservatives.
Okay, so I think this would be a great place to actually start practicing what we're talking about. So if you want to pair off, or if you need to bring, find a group of 3, and we're going to start off with a non-policy topic. So find your pairs and then pick who's going to be the interviewer or the listener, and that person will ask the other person about a time they had to make a difficult decision. So it's not policy based, just ask them in, following our reflective listening process, ask them about a difficult decision. And then, we'll come back. We're going to spend like 5 minutes on this, and then hopefully we'll have time to do a policy related practice. Okay, let's wrap up conversations, maybe 30 seconds. All right. Okay. If you're wrapped up, does anybody have thoughts they want to share on how that went? Did it feel okay? Did it feel weird? Okay.
And can I ask a
Okay.
so, I mean, was this any different from your typical conversations, or was it kind of, you already do this by instinct? Or did you really concentrate on making a change?
The question elicited an experience that, you know, we, they're not opposing views about that. It's, you know what I mean? I mean, it was
It's
like,
supposed to be relatively easy, this one.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
We started that way on purpose because sometimes the policy stuff that's in our heads gets in the way of reflective listening. So,
I think sometimes when you are reflecting on what you hear, I think it's enough just to even say the last thing you heard and it keeps them going. Like, for example, my daughter was talking about making a decision between soccer and cross country. You know, oh, cross country. Like, you know, it just kind of keeps it going. Just to say, just to show that you're listening. Anyway, that was something I noticed.
Yeah.
Sure, I can answer that. I think for us, we first of all struggle to find an answer to the prompts. That took most of our time. But two, at least for me, I think this prompt, like you said, it was meant to be a little bit easier. So on the flip side, when you're talking about something a little bit more emotionally charged, I feel like it's harder to listen to someone because everything they say, you're kind of planting a counterattack as they're talking. So it's really hard to focus on what they're saying. But when you're having a conversation about something that's not as charged and more day to day, it's much easier to listen and to reflect and connect with that person because it's more relatable.
definitely, and kind of one of the thoughts John Sabin gave us when we talked about this was that this would just be a good way to prime ourselves so that we kind of stop trying to come up with that counter argument right away. So maybe that will help the next part work a little smoother than it would. So now one person will play a member of Congress who does not believe in creating new taxes. So that's your role, and it's a bedrock principle for you. And
the tax here includes a carbon fee.
yeah,
That's really what
that's where it's driving towards.
Yeah.
And the other person in the group plays a CCL volunteer who will be engaging and practicing and reflective listening. And if we have time, we can flip-flop on those. If you're a CCLer, you want to ask the open-ended question, reflect what you're hearing, and affirm, you know, common ground, and, you know, ask permission to share your own perspective. So let's, how much time do we have? Maybe.
we got plenty of time. We have 15 more minutes, and so it should be easy
Yeah.
to.
So I'll stop at halfway, and then maybe we can switch roles at halfway. So one person is a member of Congress who does not believe in new taxes, and that's a bedrock principle for that person. And the other person's our volunteer who's going to go through this process here.
And is trying to move them towards the carbon fee and dividend.
Well,
Or not move them, but
yeah.
try to have a conversation.
Try to have a conversation. We're not trying to move anybody, right?
I'll agree. I'll stipulate this. What I'm worried about is if it's going to increase the percentage of runoff, because we already have so weighted down our school people. The division between poor and rich and going large and stuff for people in this position. The actions of building. One might not be able to do.
So you would like to learn more about what would you also have to go for something else? Because in my life, like I said,
once the surface, every time you exhale, it's a peak out. And while you're giving it a building, it will never do that. You feel you would not trust the government to keep commitment to the government. But suppose the big government is people like you, you how's it take? Yes, it's really going to feel if you start the decision making process and you can, that's the thing. I noticed that we're on volumes. It's always so funny. And there's a thing called reality, which I'll have some originals if you want. But version of this, we have said we will not be able to have share these things about you next. So what you're proposing sounds like go to and then put the numbers into doing it. And you have someone
Okay, find a good stopping point and maybe switch roles. Yeah.
When I needed to. What?
I don't think I want to listen to equations. This is a too many equations. There are too many variables. The perfect thing to tell me that the rules are you might believe there's that.
No.
So it sounds like.
When I used to teach, I told the students, all models are some models are used to and the model that we have to find is useful now on how we can protect ourselves against this. What's on the planet on average? Sometimes it's what catches on the sea. House insurance. Car, and that's a year. Well, and same thing. There's a tail end of it out there. So, I mean, yeah. My feeling is that we just don't know.
I will be the next person. You know.
I completely agree with you that overuse climate change and for the variable and outcomes.
Yeah, negative, but you're not. I know you're talking, you know the product, you know the product, but the can't see if you can say this. Yeah.
As an activist working in this issue, it's always a nice patriots far out. A lot of blame, the cold, allergies, everything on climate change. It's true. Yeah, that's true. So I appreciate your concern on that, but that doesn't change the underlying fact that it's and the idea of using government which I know courts are not big thing. Let me bring in the crew and but in the meantime, when we're running these models, we realize that we'll have because there was so surprisingly one of those I think we need a good base in terms of hopefully and exposed to a lot of this discussion, but you know space load is so we're looking how to set but we could just take away a lot of the because that is they're an example of doing something that looks good on paper, makes a nice bumper sticker, makes a nice kind of stuff, and that doesn't actually address the problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I gotta say, you know, I was looking at that.
All these subsidies, Oh, we got.
Okay, everybody, I think we should wrap up our conversations and maybe we can bring back some thoughts to the group.
So again, I would like to get a sense of whether this felt like something you would have done anyway, or if you were applying a new set of ideas, whether you could actually apply this, or, you know, if you're, in some sense, your personality is fixed enough that you already have your ways of interacting and it's very hard to change your habits. And maybe your habits are already great, so you don't have to. Maybe you do this naturally. I don't, but I wish I did, but I have a hard time with that too. Did you have to really work at this, or did it come? Yeah.
I think that.
Hello? I think in this case, first we were talking to this reasonable person who said, oh, I'm interested in fee and dividends, and I'd like to learn more. And then when I played the role, it's like, you know, my people can't afford to pay more taxes, I'm just not interested. And then Terry was trying to talk to me about you know, how costly climate change is. And so I guess in neither case did we start with, do you believe in climate change, or do you, you know, how do you feel about the threat that poses? So
And I asked, was there this reflection? There an opportunity for somebody to say, I hear this from me? Or was it more like a typical conversation? I give some information, they respond, I respond, they respond. Because what we're going for here is this opportunity to really listen to somebody to the point where you almost are in their heads. And then you speak, even if you don't necessarily agree, you're inside them enough that you can say their viewpoint. Was that part of this?
Well, my job is to remind you that we have no time left, but I will very quickly say that I did an absolutely awesome job of reflecting what she said. And it was sort of interesting because that did help me. It sort of led into a way that I could affirm the common ground, because I was getting into her head, and then sort of naturally thinking about what was reasonable there and how I could affirm. But
Very good. If we have to stop, we have to stop, but yeah.
we do have to,
All right.
I kind of have to wrap up.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
yeah. Thank you very much. Motivational interviewing, guidelines on motivational interviewing. There are many resources available, and I tell you what, I will spend a couple of seconds on my phone trying to find a website that will have an informational sheet. You want to get just the bullet points of it?